The Wyoming wind screamed like a banshee, cawing at the edges of a lonely cabin perched on the rugged slopes of the Teton Range. Caleb Holt, a man whose heart carried more scars than the weathered leather of his boots, stood before the door of what he thought was his salvation. He'd poured his last dollar into this place, a remote homestead bought sight unseen from a shifty dealer in Cheyenne, desperate for a fresh start after losing everything he loved. But as dusk painted the sky blood red, a faint glow flickered through the cabin's frosted window, and the thin trail of smoke rising from the chimney stopped him dead. Someone was living in his home. In the next heartbeat, Caleb would open that door and stumble into a secret that could either save him or destroy him completely. 3 months earlier, Caleb's world had crumbled when a fire, suspicious and merciless, devoured his family's ranch in Colorado. His mother's warm laughter and his younger brother's dreams of becoming a sheriff were reduced to ash in a single night. The official report called it an accident, but Caleb knew better. Someone had wanted his family's land, and they'd paid for it with their lives. With nothing left but a deed to this Wyoming cabin and a Colt revolver heavy with purpose, Caleb had come here to rebuild or to hide. The deed, folded neatly in his duster's pocket, was his proof of ownership, his last tether to hope. He stepped onto the creaking porch, the cold biting through his gloves. The cabin looked sturdy, built to withstand the brutal winters of the frontier, but the light inside told a different story. Someone was using his firewood, sleeping under his roof, claiming what was rightfully his. Caleb's hand tightened around the door handle, his pulse steady, but his mind racing. He'd faced down rustlers and storms, but this felt different, like the moment before a lightning strike. Whoever was inside would learn that Caleb Holt didn't back down from a fight. He pushed the door open, and the sight inside stole his breath. The cabin was no squatter's den, it was a home. A fire roared in the stone hearth, casting a warm glow over a braided rug and a small table set with a single tin plate and a bundle of dried lavender. The air carried the comforting scent of sage and freshly baked cornbread. Standing near the fire, a woman turned to face him. Her chestnut hair was pinned loosely, strands catching the light like spun copper, and her amber eyes held a fire that matched the one behind her. She was striking, no older than 30, in a patchwork dress that spoke of hard times, but carried herself with a quiet strength that demanded respect. In her hands was a worn journal, clutched like a shield. "You're Caleb Holt," she said, her voice calm but tinged with a Kentucky lilt, soft as a summer breeze but sharp with purpose. "I knew you'd come." Caleb froze, his hand still on the door. How did she know his name? He'd told no one about this purchase, not even the barkeep in Cheyenne. He tipped his hat back, studying her warily. "Ma'am, I'm not sure who you are, but this is my property. I've got papers to prove it, and I don't take kindly to trespassers." She set the journal on the table, her movements slow and deliberate, like a card player revealing a winning hand. "My name's Leela Morrow, and I'm not trespassing, Mr. Holt. I'm hiding." Caleb's voice was low, edged with suspicion. He stepped inside, letting the door swing shut behind him. "From what? Or who?" Lila's eyes flicked to the window, scanning the darkening pines outside. "Someone who'd kill to keep a secret buried. The same secret that brought you here, whether you know it or not." Caleb's blood ran cold. Her words were a riddle, but the fear in her eyes was real, raw, and unshakable. He'd come to this cabin expecting solitude, but now he stood face to face with a woman who seemed to know more about his life than he did. The wind howled louder, rattling the cabin's walls, and Caleb felt the weight of his revolver like a warning. Whatever Leela was running from, it was closing in fast, and he was already caught in its shadow. What does Leela know about Caleb's past, and what secret binds them to this cabin? Caleb Holt's hand lingered near his revolver, his eyes locked on Leela Morrow's face. Searching for a lie, the cabin's firelight danced across her features, highlighting the resolve in her amber eyes, but also a flicker of fear she couldn't quite hide. Her words, "a secret that could cost us both our lives," hung in the air like gunpowder waiting for a spark. Outside, the Wyoming night pressed against the cabin's walls, the wind carrying whispers of danger through the Teton pines. Caleb didn't know Leela, didn't trust her, but something in her voice told him she wasn't spinning a tale, and that made her presence in his cabin all the more dangerous. "Leela," Caleb said, his voice low, steady as the ticking of a pocket. "Watch, you've got 10 seconds to tell me what you're running from and why my name's on your lips. I didn't come here for trouble, but I'll face it if it's already found me." Lila's gaze darted to the window again, her fingers tightening around the journal she'd set down. "It's not just about me, Mr. Holt. This cabinet's tied to your family, to the fire that took your ranch. I didn't end up here by chance." Caleb's chest tightened, the mention of the fire slicing through him like a blade. "You're talking about my mother and brother. How do you know about that? And don't give me riddles, speak plain." Before Leela could answer, a low rumble broke the silence outside, not thunder, but the unmistakable thud of hoof beats, fast and heavy, tearing up the trail toward the cabin. Caleb's instincts kicked in. He crossed the room into strides, peering through the frosted window. 3 riders emerged from the shadowed pines, their silhouettes sharp against the moonlit snow. They weren't travelers seeking shelter. The glint of steel on their belts and the purposeful way they rode screamed trouble bounty hunters. "Or worse, friends of yours?" Caleb asked, his voice dry as sagebrush. Already reaching for the rifle propped against the wall, Lila's face paled, but she didn't shrink back. "They're after me, and if they find me here, they won't care that you've got a deed. They'll burn this place to the ground to get what they want." Caleb's grip tightened on the rifle. "And what do they want, Leela? You?" She hesitated, then opened the journal, revealing a folded piece of parchment tucked inside. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it, showing a hand-drawn map marked with a single red X deep in the T. "Ton range. They want this. It's why I'm hiding. It's why your family died." Caleb's blood ran cold. The map was drawn in a familiar hand, his brother Jonah's. The same precise lines Jonah used to sketch cattle brands, now marking a location that could hold answers to the fire that stole his family. "Where did you get that?" he demanded. Stepping closer, his voice barely above a growl, Leela met his gaze, her eyes steady despite the fear. "Jonah gave it to me. I knew him, Caleb, before he died. He told me to find this cabin if anything happened to him. He said you'd come, and you'd know what to do." The hoof beats grew louder, boots now crunching on the porch outside. Caleb's mind raced. Jonah, his brother, the boy who dreamed of being a sheriff, had known Leela, had trusted her with a secret worth killing for. The pieces didn't fit, but there was no time to puzzle them out. A heavy fist pounded on the door, and a voice, rough as gravel, bellowed, "Leela Morrow, we know you're in there. Come out quiet, or we'll drag you out." Caleb glanced at Leela, her face a mask of determination despite the terror in her eyes. He didn't know her story, didn't know if he could trust her, but one thing was clear. Those men outside weren't here for justice, they were here for blood. And if Jonah had trusted Leela, Caleb would have to take a chance on her too. "Stay behind me," he whispered, cocking the rifle. "We're not opening that door." What did Jonah know that cost him his life? And how deep does this secret run? The cabin door rattled under another brutal knock, the sound echoing like a judge's gavel in the tense silence. Caleb Holt stood firm, his rifle aimed steady at the door, the weight of Leela Morrow's words still burning in his mind. "It's why your family died." Her brother Jonah's map, now tucked back into her journal on the table, held answers to the fire that stole his family. But the 3 men outside weren't here to talk. Their hoof beats had silenced, replaced by the crunch of boots on the porch and the low murmur of voices planning something ugly. Caleb glanced at Leela, her amber eyes wide but resolute, clutching the journal like it was her last lifeline. He didn't trust her fully, not yet, but if Jonah had believed in her, that was enough to keep her alive tonight. "Last chance, Leela," the gravelly voice roared from outside. "Come out, or we're coming in, and we ain't gentle." Caleb's jaw clenched. "Get to the back window," he whispered to Leela. "If this goes south, you run for the pines and don't look back." Leela shook her head, her Kentucky lilt sharp with defiance. "I'm not leaving you to face them alone." Jonah wouldn't have. Before Caleb could argue, the door burst open, splintering under a heavy boot. 3 men stormed in, their faces weathered by hard living and harder sins. The leader, a broad-shouldered brute with a scar slicing through his gray beard, held a shotgun leveled at Caleb's chest. His two companions, lean and twitchy, fanned out, pistols glinting in the firelight. The air thickened with the smell of gun oil and menace. "Drop the rifle, cowboy," the leader growled, his eyes flicking to Leela. "This ain't your fight." Caleb didn't budge, his voice cold as the Wyoming snow. "You're on my land, threatening my guest. That makes it my fight." The leader's scarred lip curled into a sneer. "Name's Gideon Voss, and that woman's got something that belongs to my employer, a map to a fortune buried in these mountains. Hand it over, and you might walk away." Caleb's mind raced. A fortune? Jonah's map wasn't just a clue to the fire, it was tied to something bigger, something worth killing for. He stole a glance at Leela, who stood rigid, her hands trembling, but her gaze fierce. She hadn't mentioned money, only danger. Was she hiding more than she'd let on? Leela stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "The map's mine, Gideon, and your employer's a liar. That fortune's blood money, stolen from good people during the war. You'll have to kill me to get it." Gideon's laugh was a low rumble, like thunder rolling over the Tetons. "That can be arranged." The words were barely out when the lean man on the left lunged for Leela. Caleb reacted on instinct, swinging his rifle like a club, catching the man's jaw with a sickening crack. The second man fired, the bullet grazing Caleb's shoulder, searing like a brand. Leela dove behind the table, grabbing a cast-iron skillet from the hearth and hurling it at the shooter, knocking his gun from his hand. The cabin erupted into chaos, fists, shouts, and the crash of furniture. Caleb tackled Gideon, the shotgun clattering to the floor. The two men grappled, Gideon's strength like a bear's, but Caleb fought with the desperation of a man with nothing left to lose. He drove his knee into Gideon's gut, then slammed his fist into the man's scarred face, sending him sprawling. Leela scrambled to her feet, clutching the journal, and kicked the fallen shotgun toward Caleb. "Finish it," she shouted, but before Caleb could grab the weapon, Gideon roared and charged, a knife flashing in his hand. Caleb dodged, the blade slicing his coat, and shoved Gideon into the hearth. The fire flared as Gideon's sleeve caught, his screams filling the cabin as he stumbled out the door, his men dragging him into the snow. Caleb panted, blood dripping. From his shoulder, the cabin a wreck of overturned chairs and shattered glass. Leela rushed to his side, tearing a strip from her dress to press against his wound. "You're hurt," she said, her voice shaking but soft, her fingers steady despite the chaos. "I'll live," Caleb grunted, his eyes scanning the dark beyond the door. "They'll be back, and they won't come alone." Leela nodded, her face grim. She opened the journal again, pointing to the red X on Jonah's map. "This marks a cache hidden during the Civil War, gold and documents that could ruin powerful men. Jonah found it by accident, and it's why your ranch burned. Someone wanted to silence him before he could tell you." Caleb's heart pounded, Jonah's face flashing in his mind, his brother's crooked grin, his stubborn sense of justice. "Who's behind this, Leela? Who's pulling Gideon's strings?" Lila's eyes darkened, her voice barely a whisper. "A man who owns half of Wyoming and calls it charity. He's closer than you think." Outside, the wind howled, carrying the faint sound of more hoofbeats in the distance. Caleb reloaded his rifle, the weight of Lila's words sinking in. The fight for his cabin had just become a fight for the truth and for survival. Who is the man behind the gold, and what does he know about Caleb's past? The Wyoming night swallowed Caleb Holt and Leela Morrow as they slipped out the cabin's back window, the shattered remains of their brief stand against Gideon Voss fading behind them. Caleb's shoulder throbbed where the bullet had grazed him, but the pain was nothing compared to the questions burning in his chest. Lila's revelation about Jonah's map, a Civil War cache tied to the fire that killed his family, had turned his fresh start into a hunt for truth. The distant hoofbeats of Gideon's reinforcements echoed through the Teton pines, urging them deeper into the forest. Leela clutched her journal, Jonah's map safe inside, her breath visible in the frigid air. Caleb didn't know if he could trust her, but with death riding hard on their trail, he had no choice but to keep moving. They crouched behind a snow-dusted boulder, the moon casting long shadows over the rugged terrain. Caleb's rifle rested across his knees, his eyes scanning the darkness for movement. How far to the nearest town? He whispered, his voice rough from the fight. Lila's amber eyes glinted in the moonlight, her Kentucky lilt soft but urgent. Cody's a day's ride, but we can't go there. Gideon's employer has men in every saloon from here to Montana. We need to reach the X on Jonah's map. It's our only chance. Caleb's jaw tightened. You keep talking about this map like it's salvation, but all I see is trouble. Why didn't Jonah tell me about it? And how did you end up with it? Lila's gaze dropped, her fingers tracing the journal's worn cover. Jonah was protecting you. He stumbled on the cache while tracking stolen cattle last spring. It wasn't just gold. There were letters, deeds, proof of land grabs that ruined families like yours. He knew if he told you, you'd both be targets. Caleb's heart twisted, picturing Jonah's stubborn grin. His brother's belief that one man could stand against corruption. So he trusted you instead. Why? Before Lila could answer, a twig snapped nearby, sharp as a gunshot in the quiet forest. Caleb raised his rifle, pulling Lila closer to the boulder. Two figures moved through the trees, their lanterns casting eerie beams across the snow. Gideon's men, or worse. Caleb's pulse steadied, years of surviving rustlers and blizzards, guiding his hand. He motioned for Lila to stay low, then crept forward, silent as a wolf. The men passed within yards, muttering about the woman and the boss's orders. Caleb caught fragments, something about a railroad baron and a deal to bury the cash forever. His blood ran cold. The fire that took his family wasn't just about their ranch. It was part of a larger scheme, one Jonah had died to expose. Caleb waited until the men's lanterns faded, then returned to Lila, his face grim. We can't stay here, he said, helping her to her feet. But I need answers, Lila. No more half-truths. She nodded, her breath catching as they hurried through the pines, the cold biting at their exposed skin. They reached a small cave, its entrance hidden by overhanging roots, and slipped inside to catch their breath. The damp air smelled of earth and moss, a stark contrast to the cabin's warmth. Caleb built a small fire, just enough to keep them from freezing, and Lila opened her journal, spreading Jonah's map on the cave floor. There's something else you need to see, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She reached into her dress pocket and pulled out a delicate silver ring, its band etched with tiny forget-me-nots. I found this in the cabin, hidden in a floorboard. It was Jonah's, wasn't it? Caleb's breath caught, his hand trembling as he took the ring. It wasn't Jonah's, it was their mother's, a gift from their father before he died in the war. Caleb had thought it lost in the fire, along with everything else. The sight of it now, glinting in the firelight, was like a punch to the gut. How did this end up here? He demanded, his voice breaking. Lila, what aren't you telling me? Lila's eyes filled with tears, but she held his gaze. I don't know how it got there, Caleb. Jonah gave me the map, but he never mentioned a ring. Maybe he hid it in the cabin for you to find. Or maybe someone else did to send a message. Caleb's mind reeled. The ring was proof the cabin was no random purchase. It was tied to his family's past, to the fire, to the men hunting them. But Lila's words stirred a deeper fear. Was she truly Jonah's ally? Or was she hiding a connection to the enemy? The hoofbeats grew louder outside, a reminder that time was running out. Caleb slipped the ring into his pocket, his resolve hardening. He'd find the cache, uncover the truth, and make whoever burned his family pay, no matter who stood in his way. Who left the ring in the cabin, and what does it reveal about Lila's true role? The Teton night pressed in like a living thing, its icy breath curling around Caleb Holt and Lila Morrow as they huddled in the cave, the faint glow of their fire casting jagged shadows on the walls. Caleb's fingers traced the silver ring in his pocket, his mother's, etched with forget-me-nots, found hidden in the cabin floorboard. Its presence was a riddle that gnawed at him, tying the cabin to the fire that killed his family and to Jonah's map, now spread out before them, marking a Civil War cache of gold and secrets. Lila's amber eyes were fixed on the map, her journal open, but Caleb's gaze lingered on her, searching for cracks in her story. She'd known Jonah, carried his map, but the ring suggested she might know more, maybe too much. We can't stay here long, Caleb said, his voice low. the pain in his grazed shoulder dulled by adrenaline. Gideon's men are combing these woods. If that map's as valuable as you say, they won't stop until they have it or us. Leela nodded, her Kentucky lilt soft but strained. The cache is a day's trek, up near Blacktail Creek. If we reach it, we'll find proof letters that name the man who ordered the fire on your ranch. But we have to move before dawn. Caleb's jaw tightened. Proof sounded good, but trust was harder to come by. You keep talking about proof, Leela, but I'm still waiting on why Jonah trusted you with all this, and how my mother's ring ended up in that cabin. Lila's eyes flickered with something: guilt, fear, or both, but before she could answer, a voice cut through the darkness outside the cave, familiar and impossible. Caleb Holt, I know you're in there. Come out slow, and nobody gets hurt. Caleb froze, his heart slamming against his ribs. That voice belonged to Nate Wheeler, his oldest friend, the man who'd ridden with him and Jonah through cattle drives and hard winters. Nate had been at the ranch the night of the fire, trapped in the barn, his screams haunting Caleb's nightmares. The sheriff said no one could have survived, yet here was Nate's voice, clear as a church bell, calling him out. Lila's hand gripped Caleb's arm, her whisper urgent, "It's a trap, don't go." But Caleb was already moving, rifle in hand, his mind a storm of betrayal and hope. He edged toward the cave's mouth, peering into the moonlight. There stood Nate, alive, his lanky frame unmistakable, a lantern in one hand and a revolver in the other. Behind him were two of Gideon's men, their guns trained on the cave. Nate's face was older, harder, a jagged scar across his cheek that hadn't been there before. "Nate?" Caleb's voice cracked, raw with disbelief. "You're alive." How? Nate's smile was thin, devoid of the warmth Caleb remembered. "Long story, partner. But I'm here now, and I need that map Lila's carrying. Hand it over, and I'll make sure you walk away." Caleb's blood turned to ice. The plot twist hit like a thunderclap. Nate, his brother in arms, wasn't a ghost or a savior. He was working for the enemy. "You were there the night my family died," Caleb said, his voice trembling with rage. "You knew Jonah was digging into something. Did you sell him out? Did you light that fire?" Nate's eyes darkened, but he didn't flinch. "You don't understand, Caleb. Jonah was stirring up trouble he couldn't handle. The man behind this owns Wyoming railroads, land, governors. I did what I had to do to survive, and now I'm giving you the same chance." Leela stepped beside Caleb, her journal clutched tight, her voice sharp. "You're a coward, Nate. Jonah trusted you, and you betrayed him. That map stays with us." Nate's gaze shifted to Leela, and something cruel flickered in his expression. "You're one to talk. Leela, why don't you tell Caleb the truth about how you met Jonah, about what you were doing in Cheyenne before you showed up with that map?" Caleb's stomach dropped. He turned to Leela, his rifle still aimed at Nate, but his heart pounding with doubt. "What's he talking about, Leela?" Lila's face paled, her lips parting but no words coming. The silence was damning, and Nate's laugh cut through it like a knife. "She didn't tell you. Leela was a saloon girl, working for the same man who wants that map. Jonah thought he could save her, but she's been playing you, Caleb. That ring in your pocket. Ask her who really hid it." Caleb's hand closed around the ring, his world tilting. Lila's eyes met his, pleading, but the seed of doubt had taken root. Had she been lying all along? Was she Jonah's lie or the bait that led him to his death? Before he could demand answers, one of Gideon's men fired, the bullet striking the cave wall, showering them with rock dust. Caleb shoved Leela down, returning fire, the cave filling with the roar of gunshots in the chaos. Nate shouted, "Last chance, Caleb. Give me the map, or you're both dead." Caleb's mind raced, torn between the friend he'd mourned and the woman he wanted to trust. But with bullets flying and the truth slipping through his fingers, one thing was clear: the answers lay with the cache, and he'd have to survive to find them. Is Leela a traitor, or is Nate twisting the truth to tear them apart? The cave echoed with the crack of gunfire, the air thick with smoke and betrayal. Caleb Holt fired his rifle, the bullet catching one of Gideon Voss's men in the shoulder, sending him sprawling into the snow outside. Leela Morrow crouched beside him, her journal clutched tight, her amber eyes wide with fear but blazing with resolve. Nate Wheeler's words calling Leela a traitor, a saloon girl who'd played Jonah, still burned in Caleb's mind, sowing doubt even as he fought to keep them alive. The silver ring in his pocket, his mother's, felt heavier than ever, a reminder of the truths he hadn't yet uncovered. But with Nate and his men closing in, survival came first. "Move," Caleb shouted, grabbing Lila's arm and pulling her toward the cave's back exit, a narrow crevice barely wide enough for one. Bullets ricocheted off the walls as they squeezed through, emerging into a howling blizzard that swallowed the Teton Range in a white fury. The storm had rolled in fast, the wind screaming like a wounded animal, snow stinging their faces. Caleb's grazed shoulder throbbed, but he pushed forward, Leela stumbling beside him, her dress catching on jagged rocks. "We need to reach Blacktail Creek," Leela gasped, her Kentucky lilt nearly lost in the gale. "The cache is there, Jonah's proof. It's our only way out." Caleb's jaw clenched, Nate's accusations echoing in his head. "You better be telling the truth, Leela. If you're leading me into a trap, I swear, I'm not," she snapped, stopping to face him, her hair whipping in the wind. "I was a saloon girl, Caleb. I worked for men like Nate's boss to survive after my family lost everything in the war. But Jonah saw me as more than that. He gave me a chance, trusted me with the map. I swear on his memory, I'm not betraying you." Her words cut through the storm, raw and desperate, and Caleb wanted to believe her. But the ring, his mother's, hidden in the cabin, gnawed at his trust. Before he could respond, a shadow loomed through the snow. Nate, his lantern a sickly glow, his revolver aimed. "End of the line, Caleb," he shouted. "Give me the map, or you both die here." Caleb raised his rifle, but Leela shoved him aside as Nate fired, the bullet grazing her arm. She cried out, dropping the journal, the map fluttering free in the wind. Caleb lunged, snatching it before it vanished into the blizzard, then tackled Nate, the two men crashing into the snow. Fists flew, blood mixing with ice. Caleb's rage for his family's death fueling every blow. Nate fought dirty, his knife flashing, but Caleb disarmed him, pinning him down, his fist raised. "Why, Nate?" Caleb roared, his voice breaking. "You were family. Why'd you burn the ranch?" Nate's scarred face twisted, not with defiance, but shame. "I didn't want to, Caleb. It was orders Elliot Kane, the railroad baron. He wanted your land for his tracks, and Jonah's map threatened to expose his deals. I tried to warn Jonah, but he wouldn't listen. Kane's men set the fire, and I let it happen to save my own skin." Caleb's fist trembled, the truth, a knife to his heart. Nate hadn't lit the match, but his cowardice had cost Jonah and their mother their lives. Before Caleb could decide Nate's fate, a gunshot rang out, and Nate slumped, blood blooming on his chest. Caleb spun, seeing Gideon Voss emerge from the storm, his gray beard crusted with snow, his shotgun smoking. "Enough talk," Gideon growled, aiming at Caleb. "Where's the map?" Leela, clutching her bleeding arm, staggered to her feet, the journal at her side. "You'll never get it," she said, her voice fierce despite the pain. She threw the journal into the fire they'd left behind, the flames devouring it. Caleb's heart sank. Jonah's map was their only leverage, but Lila's eyes met his, a silent promise that she had a plan. Gideon roared, charging at Leela, but Caleb intercepted, slamming him into a tree. The shotgun fired wild, the blast lost in the storm. The two men grappled, Gideon's bear-like strength overwhelming. But Caleb fought for Jonah, for his mother, for the woman who'd risked everything to stand with him. He drove his elbow into Gideon's throat, then grabbed a fallen branch, striking Gideon's head with a crack that sent him crumpling into the snow, unconscious. Caleb stumbled to Leela, helping her up, the storm raging around them. "The maps. Gone," he panted. "What now?" Lila's hand closed over his, her voice steady despite her wound. "I memorized it, Caleb, every line, every mark. Jonah made me promise to find the cache if he couldn't. It's not just gold, it's proof. Kane burned your family and others to build his empire." Caleb stared at her, the blizzard blurring the world, but not her resolve. Nate's betrayal, the ring, the fire, it all led to Elliot Kane, a man whose name carried power and blood. Caleb didn't know if Leela was telling the whole truth, but her courage in the face of death was enough to keep him by her side. The cache was their last hope, and they'd face Cain together or die trying. Can Caleb and Leela reach the cache before Cain's men? And what final secrets does it hold? The blizzard raged on, a white veil cloaking the Teton Range as Caleb Holt and Leela Morrow trudged toward Blacktail Creek, their breath frosting in the bitter air. Caleb's shoulder burned from the bullet graze, and Lila's arm, wrapped in a makeshift bandage torn from her dress, blood through the fabric. Yet her amber eyes shone with a fire that matched Caleb's own shared resolve to reach the Civil War cache Jonah had died for, the key to exposing Elliot Kane. The railroad, barren who'd burned Caleb's family to ash. The map was gone, consumed by flames in Lila's desperate act, but she'd memorized every line, guiding them through the storm with a certainty that both steadied and unsettled Caleb. The silver ring in his pocket, his mother's, etched with forget-me-nots whispered of truths still buried. But time was running out. They reached a narrow canyon, its walls looming like sentinels in the snow. A faint glow flickered ahead, where Blacktail Creek carved through the rock. There, Leela whispered, pointing to a hidden crevice sealed by boulders. That's where Jonah hid the cache. Caleb nodded, his rifle ready, his heart pounding, with the weight of what they might find: gold, letters, proof of Cain's crimes. But as they approached, the crunch of boots on snow froze them in place. A lantern's light cut through the blizzard, revealing Elliot Kane himself, flanked by 4 armed men. Kane was a tall figure in a tailored coat, his silver hair gleaming under a wide-brimmed hat, his eyes cold as the ice around them. He held a leather satchel, as if he'd already claimed the prize. "You're persistent, Holt," Kane said, his voice smooth but venomous, like whiskey laced with poison. "And you, Leela, Jonah's little stray." I warned him to stay quiet, but he thought he could play hero. Caleb's grip tightened on his rifle, rage boiling for Jonah, for his mother, for the life stolen from him. "You burned my family for this," he growled, stepping forward. "For gold and land. You're not walking away from here." Kane's smile was a predator's, unyielding. "Land is power, Holt. Your ranch was in my way, just like Jonah's snooping. Hand over the girl and whatever is left of that map, and I might let you live." Leela stepped beside Caleb, her voice steady despite her wound. "You're too late. Kane, the map's gone, but I know where the cache is, and I'll die before you touch it." Kane's men raised their guns, but Caleb was faster, firing a shot that dropped one to the snow. The canyon erupted in chaos: gunfire, shouts, and the howl of the storm. Caleb and Leela dove behind a boulder, bullets splintering the rock. Lila's hand found Caleb's, her touch a fleeting anchor in the madness. "We have to get to the crevice," she whispered. "The proof's inside." Caleb nodded, his eyes locked on hers, the doubt from Nate's betrayal fading. Whatever her past, Leela had fought for him, blood for him. He trusted her now, with everything he had left. They moved together, weaving through the canyon, Caleb's rifle covering their path as Leela led the way. A bullet grazed Caleb's leg, but he pushed through. Driven by the memory of Jonah's grin and his mother's ring, they reached the crevice, and Leela shoved a boulder aside, revealing a wooden chest hidden in the shadows. She pried it open, revealing gold coins glinting like forbidden stars and a bundle of letters tied with twine. Caleb grabbed the letters, his heart racing as he recognized Jonah's handwriting. To Caleb, "If I don't make it." Kane's deeds: proof of murders, bribes, stolen land. Among them was a note in his mother's hand, confessing she'd worked with Jonah to hide the ring in the cabin, hoping Caleb would find it and finish what they started. "Your mother knew," Leela said softly, her voice breaking. "She and Jonah were working together to stop Cain. That's why he targeted your ranch." Caleb's throat tightened, the ring in his pocket now a beacon of his family's courage. But before he could process it, Kane's voice roared, "Enough." He stood at the crevice's mouth, his revolver aimed at Leela. "Step away, or she dies." Caleb moved without thinking, shoving Leela behind him and firing. The bullet struck Kane's shoulder, and he staggered, his satchel falling. Caleb charged, tackling Kane into the snow, their struggle a blur of fists and fury. Kane was strong, but Caleb fought for more than survival, for justice, for family. He pinned Kane, wrenching the revolver free, and pressed it to the Baron's chest. "This "Is for Jonah," Caleb said, his voice steady. "For my mother, for every life you destroyed." Cain's eyes widened, but before Caleb could pull the trigger, Lilith's hand stopped him. "He's not worth it, Caleb. Let the law have him. These letters will bury him." Caleb hesitated, his finger trembling on the trigger. But Lilith's touch, her belief in him, pulled him back from the edge. He lowered the gun, binding Cain's hands with rope from the chest. The remaining men, seeing their boss defeated, fled into the storm, their lanterns vanishing in the white dot as the blizzard quieted. Caleb and Leela stood over the chest, the letters in their hands a testament to Jonah's sacrifice. Lilith's fingers brushed Caleb's, and he met her gaze, seeing not just a survivor, but a partner who'd fought beside him. "You didn't have to stay," he said softly. "But I'm glad you did." Lilith's smile was small, but warm like the first light. "After a long night, Jonah believed in you, Caleb. So do I." They turned toward the canyon's exit, the weight of the letters and the ring binding them to a future they'd forged together. But what would the world make of the truths they carried? And who else might come for the cash? What will Caleb and Leela do with the proof? And can their bond withstand the challenges ahead?